I've always thought that I knew my son better than everyone else. Ethan was 19 years old, tall, lanky, intelligent in the important ways, and stubborn in the ways that made being a father seem like climbing an oil-covered hill. However, he was mine, and his heart had always been kind, even when he pushed boundaries. That's what I convinced myself, at least, until this spring, when one bad decision caused everything in our house to shut down. It started on an overcast Thursday. Stressed out and late from work, I was balancing two grocery bags and a handbag that seemed to be gaining 10 pounds every mile. I had always found tranquility in our small Cedar Oaks home, a peaceful street with trees. After dinner, kids ride their bikes. When they watered their lawns, the neighbors grinned. The type of location where nothing significant ever appeared to occur. However, I entered a storm that day that I was unaware was coming. As I pulled the door open, I called to Ethan, "Are you at home?" No response. That wasn't unexpected. He was generally upstairs playing video games or wearing headphones. I put down the groceries, kicked off my shoes, and headed for the living room when I noticed something: the broken picture frame on the ground. The picture wasn't just anyone. It was the photo taken on the day he received his high school diploma, the one when I was so proud that I burst as I stood next to him and put my hand on his back. The frame was twisted at the corner, and the glass was broken into a web of jagged lines. My stomach grew constricted. There was a problem. I cautiously grabbed it up while crouching. Ethan emerged from the hallway when I straightened up, his eyes puffy and his hair disheveled. That implied that he had either been upset or sobbing, or occasionally both. "Hey," I murmured. "What happened to the picture?" He avoided looking into my eyes and stroked the back of his neck. "It dropped. It didn't sound credible." "Ethan," I murmured, strong but gentle, "talk to me." He didn't. He hid his head in his hands and fell onto the couch instead. I carefully sat next to him. "What's happening?" I assumed he would remain silent for so long, but at last he gave a shaky sigh. "Mom, I made a mistake. They are just two words, but they are more powerful than any storm." "What's messed up mean?" I inquired. He combed through his hair with his fingers. I went too far. My heart stopped beating. Mark, our neighbor and the father of Ethan's best friend, Caleb, rushed in the front door before I could inquire what that meant. His eyes were flaming, his hands were clenched, and his face was red with rage. "Where is he?" Mark gave a bark. "Mark, what's going on?" I stood up quickly and asked. Mark poked Ethan with a finger. "Ask your son." Ethan winced. Instinctively, I moved to the side of them. "Speak with me. I need to hear what happened from someone." Mark gave Ethan a glare. "My garage was broken into by your son." I gasped. "What is he?" As though he prayed he might vanish, Ethan's shoulders gave way. Ethan retorted, "I didn't steal anything. Just now, I borrowed something. I intended to replace it." Borrowed. Mark lost his temper. "Ethan, you cut the lock. You entered." My heart pounded. "Slice off the lock." Ethan shut his eyes. "I apologize," he muttered. "Caleb's old drone was what I needed. I believed I could use some of its components to fix mine for my engineering project. I didn't consider it. Didn't you think?" Mark concluded in a furious tone. "Mark, you're quite correct that you didn't." I spoke nicely but aggressively. "I'm so sorry. Let me take care of this. We'll put this right, please." In an attempt to relax, he let out a strong exhale. "Sarah, I had faith in you. He went too far today, yet you're a decent mother." He was not mistaken. The quiet in the house felt oppressive when Mark left. I sat next to Ethan once more, speaking quietly but firmly. "Tell me all about it." He gave a shaky nod. "No hiding, no excuses. I've been having trouble in my engineering course. I knew I wouldn't have time to redo my final project after I made a mistake. I went into a panic. I thought I could fix mine if I could borrow some parts from Caleb's old drone. Just borrow, not steal. I was embarrassed to inquire and didn't want to annoy him. I asked again, embarrassed. Instead, you broke in. He took a deep swallow. I didn't intend to act in such a foolish manner. I ought to have screamed. Perhaps I wanted to, but when I looked at my 19-year-old son, who was still very much a child in some aspects and was frantically attempting to be an adult in others, I had a mixture of pain and epiphany. I said calmly, "Ethan, you crossed a boundary. A serious one. This has nothing to do with drones. It has to do with trust." "I understand," he muttered. "Furthermore, you didn't simply break into a garage. The thing that seemed to hurt someone the most was when you betrayed both his and my trust." Tears were streaming from his eyes. He attempted but was unable to blink away. Even though my chest constricted, I was still unable to console him. Not until he realized how serious this was, I stated unequivocally, "You're going to take responsibility." He nodded, his eyes down, and said, "No shortcuts. Go apologize to Mark, please. No excuses, please. After that, we will cover the cost of the broken lock. At the bookstore, you're putting in extra hours till every penny is paid." "All right," Ethan muttered. "What about your project? Tonight, you're going to give your professor a call to explain the situation. You'll want to know if there's a method to redo the task correctly without stealing or cutting corners." His voice broke. "What if he fails me, Mom? You will then gain knowledge from it. Failure is tolerable, but you cannot disregard boundaries or cause harm to others." He dabbed at his eyes. "I apologize." At last, I touched his back with my hand. Not in pardon just yet, but in recognition. "Well," I responded quietly, "get through this. However, you must regain the trust that you betrayed." He nodded once more, resolutely this time. Dash, dash, dash. He walked to Mark's residence the following morning. I needed to make sure he followed through, so I observed from the window, not to spy. Before knocking, Ethan waited there for about a minute, shuffling nervously from foot to foot. With his arms crossed, Mark responded. Although their talk was brief, I could see Ethan's modest demeanor, his head slightly lowered, and his slow, deliberate speech. Inch by inch, Mark's face softened. After exchanging a quick nod, Ethan returned home with a lighter shoulder, but still bearing the weight of the situation. He inhaled deeply and sighed. Ethan claimed he was forgiving of me. However, he stated that it will take some time for him to trust me once more. "That's fair," I replied. He nodded and said, "Trust isn't a switch, it's a rebuild. Additionally, remember to give your lecturer a call today." He smiled a little wearily. "Did it already. I have to start the project over from the beginning. Take Monday, that's 4 days. Yes, you are capable of doing it." He gave another nod. This time, he had a stronger resolve in his eyes. Dash, dash, dash. Our dining room table was cluttered with wires and tiny tools after 4 exhausting days of late nights, frustration, and trial and error engineering experiments. He handled the actual work, but I did assist when I could, usually by reminding him to extend his back and delivering refreshments. His rebuilding involved turning screws, soldering wires, and recording calculations in his notebook. Not only the undertaking, but also himself. He finally reclined in his chair about midnight on a Sunday night, tired. "It works," he said in a whisper. A faint whirring filled the room as the tiny drone rose from the table and hummed softly. With misty eyes, Ethan gazed at it with relief rather than just pride. I put my hand on his shoulder and grew. The touch carried forgiveness this time. I said, I'm proud of you. He released a breath that he had been holding for several days. Thanks, Mom. Dash, dash, dash. Weeks went by. Ethan gradually won back Mark's esteem by putting in extra hours and repaying every dime. The quiet rhythm of the area was restored. Life returned to normal, but a fundamental shift had occurred. Months later, Ethan stopped when we were setting the dinner table one evening. Thank you for sticking with me, Mom. In the important ways, I saw him as mature now, more considerate of the repercussions, and more grateful for trust. You went too far, I remarked politely. However, you returned from it. That's important, he said with a smile, the type that is visible to the eyes. I promise not to make the same mistake twice. I know, I answered. I also had faith in him, because ultimately, the most challenging lessons, the ones we worry would shatter them, are frequently the ones that strengthen them. And Ethan had become stronger because he made the decision to learn from his error rather than because of it.